guys, welcome back to Run Free with Mackenzie Davis. This week I am actually so excited to talk to you guys because, well, first of all, let me apologize because I know this episode's going up late because I'm recording it on Friday, like as this Friday's episode's going up. It's going to be like that sometimes, unfortunately, because of the fact that I have a full-time job this week, which I'll tell you about more, I guess, in the rent freeze segment, but just like chaos at my job. Anyway, so this week's episode, if you haven't already like read somewhere in the title or something, is talking about mental health. And so I don't want you guys to get scared away by the title, hopefully, or just like scared away in general by this topic and think it's going to be boring necessarily. I completely understand though if you do want to like skip if this is not your forte, because this is a different world than like typical real estate, but I am going to talk about how it relates to real estate. The full purpose of the episode is like I wanted to talk about how I got diagnosed with OCD, kind of because it completely changed my life, first of all, and second of all because it really did impact my career. I completely changed my job, which you guys know because I told you on the podcast, like I recently just changed my job, my full-time job, and so that was a big deal, and it does come into play with real estate. And I know I'm not the only one that's out there, obviously, because I work in mental health. So I just figured that I'm not shy to talk about it. Like in my real life, like if people bring it up, I talk about it all the time. And I have a playlist on my TikTok about it and, you know, videos with tons of comments about you guys asking questions about things like this. So I was like, let me just make a full episode telling you guys the full story, and then we can kind of kiki about it if that's cool. So yeah, let's see, what should I start with? This past week at work was our big work open house for our skills groups, which were really cool. We offer these groups which are like skill, I just said skills groups, but like yoga and like wellness and health, and I taught one on healthy relationships, and I did one on transportation, and there's just like different things like that. And so we had an open house for that, but we had been preparing for like 3 months for it. So that was like the big thing this week, and that's why I've been so busy. And then other than that, I have been doing so many showings, which is great. Like I don't know what happened besides the typical nobody does anything during the holidays, and then as soon as January 1st hits, it's like everybody everywhere wants to buy a house, because that's just how it goes, especially when people put that on their New Year's resolutions, which I love. Like I think that's so cool. It's just like it's a typical thing that happens every year. But this year I've got a lot of clients. Like I'm literally sitting right next to my business whiteboard that, if you guys saw my business planning episode, I have with all my clients on it, and I have got 7 active clients right now, which is a lot for me. Usually it's like 1 or 2. So that's crazy, but grateful nonetheless. So just lots of showings and running around and trying to catch up on sleep. I got an Aura ring, which has been really fun. And I track everything now because of it. Like I became this like health nut. I mean, last week I told you guys I like decided that my frontal lobe developed, and so now I'm like conscious, and I haven't had soda this year so far, still proud of myself for that one. But I'm like tracking my habits on like a habit tracker, and I have like all of the widgets on my phone. It's too much, but anyway, that's me now. So welcome, new year, new me. Welcome to the new me. So without further ado, that's basically really all that I've been up to. I hope you guys are having a great start to your year. I love the fresh feeling of a January, like the crisp new year. I love to feel fresh and new. It's also my birth month. My birthday's on the 31st. So I always feel like just like very new in that sense. Like I'll be 24 this month. So I feel like really it's a full new year for me. But yeah, I just hope you guys are all feeling that fresh vibe too. I know there's a lot going on in California. I wanted to say that too. And I just can't even imagine. It's so sad. I was literally crying watching videos earlier. It's just devastating. So, I'm sending my thoughts to the families out there. And of course, like if anybody has any links or anything that they want me to share, please send them my way. My problem with those things is that I get so overwhelmed with the amount of resources that I get like paralyzed and don't know what to post, like afraid to post the wrong thing. Like I'm always afraid I'm going to get like, it's so stupid. I'm like, I'm not going to get canceled for posting fire resources, but like in the back of my mind. And you know what? That's actually a great segue because that is an anxiety thing that I do. Even so, before I tell you all the story, I'll just confirm that the diagnosis that I have, or the diagnoses, because I have more than one, is I have obsessive compulsive disorder, so OCD, and the subtypes that I experience are harm OCD, and then I also have pure OCD, which means that they're more like mental compulsions. Yeah, those are like the main two. There's some just right OCD as well, and I'll tell you guys more what those mean. And then I also have some just like general anxiety, but I have panic disorder too. Although I will say I haven't had a panic attack in over a year. So I would say I'm like giving you guys a therapy lesson, but in the DSM-5, which is like the diagnostic manual for mental disorders, you can be in remission for panic disorder. And I would say maybe I could be considered for that because I haven't had a panic attack in a really long time. And I feel like if I were to start feeling like I was panicking, I would be able to ground myself because I like know how to, just based on my body. Like I know myself now. Anyway, so that's like me. That's what I'm like now knowing about myself. But if you go back about 3 years in my life, I knew none of this about myself. And I mean, obviously, I think I've experienced all of these symptoms of all of those things since I was 14, 15. I mean, even going back to when I was a younger kid, like there were experiences of like death anxiety being a really big thing, like having my mom count with me to 100 every night so that I could, see how far away death was because I was really like disturbed that people died. And like, I would like, God, be so obsessed with fires. I hated them, and kidnapping and anything terrible I saw on the news, I became obsessed with. Like I was so terrified. And I do these things to this day to the point where like, I can't watch news or be on news sites because I will obsessively scroll. Like if I see something on there, I have to continuously read that article until I know what happened to the people. And I don't mean like, oh, I have to do it. It's like, no, that's an obsession, compulsion thing. And it's like my brain won't be still, if that makes any sense. And so it's like a really discomforting thing because that's like a harm, death, all of that in one kind of a thing. So when I was younger, it was really like debilitating because I couldn't like satisfy the compulsions, if that makes sense, because I was little. Like I would be without the information. Like when I got older, I'd be able to satisfy them. I'd just keep digging down these rabbit holes. But when I was younger, I'd be like in my bed being like, oh my God, I'm gonna die, the fires, all this stuff. Like I was just like a kid with anxiety. And then when I got older, I think it manifested more into OCD at that point. And that's when like the searches and things started happening. And so it didn't really start bothering me until it manifested socially. And that was when I was probably about like 17 or 18. And I noticed it because I would go places and I would leave, and it started happening, and it would like snowball to then be everywhere, where I would go to the grocery store, I would go to a friend's house, I would go anywhere. And as soon as I left, anybody I conversated with, anybody I had to interact with, like I wouldn't have stumbled over my words. I wouldn't have made a fool of myself or embarrassed myself or said anything bad. In fact, if my boyfriend was with me or if someone was with me and I would like tell them that I felt this way about the interaction, they'd be like, you sounded amazing. Like, you talked so well. And I'd be like, oh my God, they think I'm so stupid. Like, they think, like, immediately into this spiral. And nobody could figure out, like, why does she think that everybody thinks these things? And I couldn't tell you either, you know? It's just like my brain goes from these cues into like this obsessive spiral into this, I've hurt or offended them, or this spiral of they thought this thing. And it's really crazy and weird. And I always come back to how I've made them feel. And that's like the bottom line of every single one of the things, which is why it's a harm thing. But on the other side of the coin, and through a lot of therapy, I've also learned that it's because I really care about people's perception of me. And so I always make this joke with my friends about being perceived. Like, I actually at a white lies party, someone made me a shirt that says, please perceive me, because I always say, don't perceive me. Like, I'm like, don't perceive me. Whether it's good or bad, I don't want to be perceived, which is funny because I'm online. Like, I am so online. And obviously you guys like are watching this right now. I'm online, but I in person am like, do not tell me good or bad. I don't want to know. Like, just don't perceive me. And so that's always like a running joke, but that also stems from that sort of obsessive thought pattern that I have. And so when I was in high school, I thought it was social anxiety because it would make me not want to go places, because I was like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to experience that afterthought of this whole, oh, I said this, I said that, I must have made them feel this way, I must have did this, you know, blah, blah, blah. All of this thought pattern. And then the reassurance seeking comes, which is where I then follow up with the people. Hey, did I make you feel okay? Did I make you upset? Was that this? Or I would call my mom. Hey, do you think that I hurt so-and-so's feelings? No, why would that hurt? I don't know. I just wanted to check, you know, those sorts of things. When it would be like absurd. Like, I would have like bumped into somebody in passing on the way to the bathroom. Hey mom, do you think I like they're mad at me? No, Mackenzie. Okay, just checking. Like, you know, like just like things like that. It was just crazy. But I had social anxiety. And then it was really not that bad until after I went to college. I started having a really hard time, and it came with drinking a little bit too. Like, I would notice if I would wake up hungover, I would outwardly start saying things. Like, I would like wake up and I'd be like, I hate my life. I hate my life. I'd like say things like this out loud. And I'm laughing about this. I do feel, and I'm being completely honest here, like a sense of embarrassment about saying these things. But it's like literally my truth. And these are compulsions. So I'm not going to be embarrassed about them because this is reducing the stigma. And I know that this happens to so many other people because it's a literal mental disorder. But anyway, I've thought interruptions, and there are all kinds of weird fucking things. I honestly am so curious about the connection with Tourette's because they are random things. I've literally said, like, the weirdest one I've ever said, I can tell you for a fucking fact, is baby shark. I've said that before as a thought interruption. There was someone that was a witness to that one. I wish I could tell you. And the only people that are witnesses to it are the people that I am like the very closest to, my brain, because I don't have control. That's the thing. It's like I can't, it's really hard for me to explain this without like an example, but that's why I'm connecting it to Tourette's, because I can't control that coming out of my mouth. The reason I ended up seeking treatment is because the thought interruptions turned physical when I couldn't express them from my mouth, like outwardly in words, when I was around people I didn't know that well. So like if it was like my boyfriend, I guess my brain was like, oh, you're comfortable enough around this person, so you can outwardly be like, baby shark or whatever, or I hate my life, or I used to say some other things that like I don't even think I want to like say, but like they're just really random things that come from whatever the intrusive thought is, I think. And my boyfriend hears some of them, my best friends have heard some of them, but then other people, if I'm like in class or in public, obviously I'm not going to like say that in class. Like that would be not cool. So I think my brain would then turn to physical things instead. So I started pinching myself, which if you guys have seen my TikTok about this, I got a tattoo on my arm because I used to pinch myself up here. And I used to leave bruises and stuff. And this was the first time that I was like introduced to this idea of like self-harm even. And it made me feel crazy because, you know, I at this point was in grad school for mental health counseling. I'm sitting in a class with my peers of all of these people that I respect so much who are also all training to be therapists. And I'm struggling so bad with this like thought disorder that is like mental mostly, because for the most part I had pure O, which was the, again, mental compulsion. So I didn't have the hand washing. I didn't have the stereotypical OCD stuff. So people, I felt like weren't going to believe me. And when I would try to explain it to people, I didn't think they were going to understand. And for some reason that really bothered me. Like I didn't think I was going to feel validated, or that like, even to this day, sometimes I don't believe myself. And I've been diagnosed multiple times. I've read the DSM multiple times. By the way, that right there, what I just said, is a OCD thing, like having to check. Like I've checked so many times. It's like, girl, you have it. Just sit with it. You've been medicated. Your doctor wouldn't put you on medicine if you didn't have it. But anyway, So that was when I decided that something was wrong. My primary care physician at the time, and because I didn't have insurance, and I was like, I can't afford to go to like therapist and just like all this stuff. And so I go, and she puts me on Lexapro, and she's like, this is just for the anxiety stuff. And she wasn't really sure if I had OCD, but luckily, because I was in grad school, the very next day or 2 days later, I was in a class with one of my professors who did demonstrations, and he would always like pull people from my class. It was like 14 of us, and he would always ask who wanted to do the demo. And I, like, of course, I'm always an open book. Like, I think if you guys know me, you know that I'm an open book in like every aspect of my life. I don't really have like secrets really, and you can ask me anything and I'll tell you about it because I just am transparent. And so I always was like, I would volunteer if nobody else would want to do it. Usually someone else would, but that day in particular, I was like, oh my gosh, I just started Lexapro. I was going through so much. Like I had been like crying nonstop because there was this one day in particular that like sent me over the edge. I had gone out the night before, and it was like with a bunch of friends, and we were just all so drunk, which was fine. You know, like I was 22 at the time, and that's just normal, you know, for a 22-year-old to do. And everyone had a great time. But I woke up the next morning at like maybe 4:00, and I woke up with a thought interruption. Like I woke up saying something out loud. And the moment that happened, I was fully awake. I was physically uncomfortable because of my intrusive thoughts, and they didn't stop. Like I was hungover. Don't get me wrong. Like I know that was part of it, but it was the worst OCD day I had ever had in my life. And I was like, I am not doing this anymore unmedicated. And that's what made me get the medication. Sorry, I missed that. That day was an important piece. And then I did the demo. So I sit down and I start telling my professor, I'm like, yeah, I just started the medication. He's like, oh, what made you start the meds? And I'm like, yeah, well, I am, experiencing all these things, the social anxiety, blah, blah, blah. I'm always worried that I'm upsetting people, blah, 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 that I'm, mean and all these things. And he starts looking around and he's like, does it surprise anybody else that like Mackenzie is like the nicest person that any of us know, and that she's worried about hurting other people's feelings? And everybody was like, yes, that's what we were all thinking. And I was like, started crying, and I was like just really moved by that, first of all. And then my professor was like, well, first of all, it's not social anxiety, it's OCD. And he's a doctor and he works at a really renowned place for anxiety and stress disorders. And of course, OCD is an anxiety disorder. So it, well, now it's an obsessive compulsive, you know what I mean? But it is, he basically, I'm trying to say that he knows what he's talking about. And he was like, actually, it's pure O, and you're experiencing this and that, and et cetera. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I started crying, and I was like, this is so validating. I had done the research, and that's exactly what I thought it was. But I was never like, I never felt like I could say that. And I thought people wouldn't believe me, and like blah, blah, blah. And my whole class was crying. And it was like a really crazy day. I was like shaking. And my classes are so long, like, and so I just was like, I need to go home. So I went home and I like sobbed the entire drive home. And I called my mom and I told her my mom was crying on the phone because, like, you know, she's like growing up, like going through all that stuff with me too. And like just connecting the dots and like it all making sense. And it's just so validating to me. At least, like, I know for some people having a diagnosis is like, oh, I don't want a diagnosis. But for me, I was like, fuck yes, thank God, because I'm not just like doing these things because I am like scared to die. It's because I have OCD, and like that makes me feel better. So I don't know, I just like, that was really helpful for me. And then once I got that diagnosis, I ended up having to go through like a series of different therapists. The first one like didn't understand, and it was honestly really frustrating because he didn't understand OCD, and he was a new therapist, which nothing against, I literally am still in my first year of licensure. Like I am a new therapist too, but he was a new therapist and he didn't understand like the OCD that I was experiencing. So he didn't believe that I had it. And then he told the psychiatrist at the therapy practice that I was going to that I didn't have it. And then she wouldn't prescribe me medication. So that was annoying. So I just really had to advocate for myself. But luckily, like, I have enough knowledge about it and about like the whole thing, and because I work in this field, so I was able to just like go a different place. But it was frustrating nonetheless. And so that was just kind of like the beginning of the journey, honestly. And I'm just, ever since then, it had gotten better and better because I got obsessed with learning about being obsessive. And like, I'm joking, but I'm serious because I really just started being fascinated with it. And then in my second half of grad school, when I had to do my practicum and started working with clients, I really found a passion for working with people with obsessive compulsive disorder because I could relate to them and I could explain the feelings that they were having in a way that people couldn't explain to them before. And so that was something I really valued. Even though I didn't work in private practice for that long, when I was there, I had so many books that I read. I did so many different like OCD things. I like did ICBT work. Like I just loved it. I still do love it. I just don't practice it anymore. But that was kind of like my thing until like I got my license for practicing therapy and I started working full time, and I hated it. I was miserable because of the fact that it triggered my OCD so bad. And like, could I have gone to therapy and like worked through that and like done stuff? And like, I don't know, maybe, but sometimes I think like the situation too is just like not meant for the person. And like, it was so much pressure for me to like feel like every day I was like, I mean, because I was like 30 people on my caseload. So I was 30 people's therapist at age 23, and kids, teens, adults, trauma, like, so PTSD, OCD, anxiety. I had a kid with pandas. I had just like grief, ADHD, like all kinds of things that I was trying to treat. And like, I had convinced myself some way or another, every single day I would go to work and just convince myself that I like offended people, hurt people, upset people, that they didn't like me, that I was saying things wrong, just like all different kinds of stuff. And like, that was every day for me. And I literally fell into like a depression. Like this past summer, I didn't see really anybody. I mean, I did stuff this summer, but I was so depressed and I like didn't care about anything. And I like just was so unhappy because I hated going to work every day. And all I thought about was how much these people hated me, which was not true in any sense. And quite honestly, if you ask my supervisors or if you ask my classmates, like I'm sure they would tell you I'm a great therapist. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn. I'm just saying that from like an OCD therapist perspective. It's ego dystonic, meaning that it like preys on the things that are opposite of you. Like it makes you afraid of a person that you're not. And so I know that because I'm afraid of being a bad therapist, that means I'm not a bad therapist. I did my research. I would have my notes ready. I would be prepared for my sessions. I would care for my clients. Like I know I'm a good therapist, but for some reason, it was just too much for me, and that's okay. And maybe, you know what? I have my license, I have my degree, and I always will. So I'm keeping up with my CEs so that if I ever want to go back to private practice, or if I ever want to become a supervisor, if I ever want to do any of that stuff, I can. But now I make almost I make almost 1.5 times as much as I did it working there. And I love going to work every day. I work as a rehab specialist now, so I need my degree and my license to do the job that I have now, but I do intakes, which is something that I loved about being a therapist because it's like just getting to know somebody for one session. And then you're not really doing any of that intervention stuff as much. And then I am overseeing direct care workers who are doing the direct care work with the clients. So I'm really helping like them come up with ideas, which is so fun. And then I'm signing on their paperwork. I'm coming up with group curriculums and stuff like that. It's a really great role for me, I think, because I'm more behind the scenes, but I'm still very involved in mental health. And it's a role that I can grow in. So that is kind of why I made that transition. Ultimately, it has to do with my mental health. And then the part where it swings back around to real estate, I think I had to explain that whole trajectory of like how I got even diagnosed and then how I made it through therapy school to then not do therapy, to then be at this job, but also doing real estate. For some reason, I have found, and I think this might be because I started real estate at 19 before my OCD really kicked in, so to speak. I felt confident in my real estate skills before my OCD really kicked in. And my OCD kind of like kills when I'm not confident. And that's why I think it felt most suffocating with my job because I was brand new. But at the same time, it's like maybe not, because my job that I'm working right now, I'm also brand new at and I love it. So I don't know if that's the case or if it's just what I was doing just naturally because I know more information. Like, and if you think about anxiety, the anxiety is uncertainty. So when you're uncertain about something, you worry about it. And when you're uncertain about how you're doing at something, you worry about it. And that's basically, I think, how it was going with my therapy stuff, because your clients are not really telling you, yeah, you're such a great therapist. I mean, sometimes they say stuff like that, but that's not what they're supposed to do. And really, like, you're not supposed to be getting your validation from your clients. And so, like, that was hard for me because I apparently need that kind of validation, or I need like some sort of measure for me to know that I'm doing my job well. And that's not really the role, or that's not really possible for a therapist, because it's all like conversations and it's all behind closed doors, and it's just like not like that. There are situations even now where it's really a lot of pressure to, you know, have someone's biggest financial transaction on your hands, or you are new at something. Like I said, that sort of confidence piece, maybe you are brand new at this and you're in the peak of your anxiety or OCD or panic or whatever it is. You know, obviously everyone's timeline is different, their mental health is different, whatever it is. And so you don't want to let those things stop you from doing your real estate journey. Now, I am, of course, the biggest advocate for doing what's right for you. I knew therapy wasn't it for me. If you are starting real estate and you do it and you're like, this is not it, listen to yourself. And for me, like, I was miserable. If you're not selling houses, that's a different thing. Like, you need to just keep at it. But if you're miserable, then you can quit. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Differentiate the two. It's just separating the two. Like, I really tried not to bring that stuff home. And so what I would have to do is, like, I would prepare for my sessions the next day for the next day at the end of the workday, so that as soon as I went home, I didn't have to think about that next workday. I could show up, I would have my session plans, I would be ready to go, and then I could tackle those sessions, I would plan the next ones, and then I would leave, and there we go. I would also only work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so that I had a 4-day weekend, because I was like, I cannot do this for more than 3 days a week. It was like the most torturous thing for me, but it's just like, do what you need to do to make it work for you until at least you can feel confident. Because I do think that if I had done it long enough, I would end up feeling confident in it for sure. It's something that it was a skill that I could have built. But for right now, I didn't want to put myself through that torture. So yeah, that I always reminded myself with the uncertainty part are that if you don't try, you'll never know what would have happened. So you can't like let yourself not do something, because that would suck if it was like really great and you just would have never known. And then if things like small happen, like I try to remove myself. I like literally imagine plucking myself out of the situation and like watching it. And I'm like, girl, if that was watching anybody else have that interaction, you would be like not even thinking twice about it. And so that's what I try to do, is like watch someone else have the interaction. And I'm like, if you watched yourself have that interaction, you would have been like, girl, you did so good with that. Like, you would have been proud of that, whoever your friend or whoever, you know what it is like. So just stop self-criticizing as much, I think, too. That's a lot of anxiety also. It's like holding yourself to certain standards. Take a look at like why you're having the anxieties, like what's making you worry. What are you worried about really? Like, is it about, like sometimes I clock myself, worrying about how people are perceiving me. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't actually give a flying fadoodle how you perceive me today. And then I have to let myself just be okay with that, So you can challenge yourself in those sorts of beliefs too. But yeah, I don't know if any of this is making sense, but I just wanted to like kind of come on here and share my like part of my mental health journey, because up until this past summer, I hadn't ever had experience with depression, and I wanted to tell you guys about that, because one, that was a doozy, and two, I feel like I just like never really could relate to that before, even as a therapist. Like, I couldn't really relate on a personal level. So now I understand that. And then the second thing being just like the OCD. And I don't ever want you guys to think I'm not talking about it on purpose. I just hadn't had a chance to long form. So if you ever have questions, or if you want to talk about it like personally, I've DM'd with people numerous times about their own like OCD journeys and stuff. And the plus about it is that I am literally a licensed mental health professional. So if you have specific questions or like things that you want help with, like I can probably actually help you. And obviously, like, I'm not going to charge you or anything. And that's like within my scope to do. I can give you tips and things like that. So we have 2 questions this week. So the first question is, I'm becoming a realtor in the summer. As a new realtor, is it possible to sell 1 house a month? My goal is to sell like 5 by the end of the year, but I don't know if that's realistic. So yes, first of all, congrats on getting your license this summer. And yeah, it is absolutely possible. And I'm telling you that from experience, because I did that my first summer in real estate. Now, I will be transparent that this market is not the same market it was when I did that in 2021, but it is a possibility. Like, that is always something you can do in real estate. The odds of that happening are probably not the same. And that's just me being 100% honest, because of the fact that the inventory is not the same. But yeah, I mean, I think this market this year is going to be really great because of the rates dropping a little bit. Hopefully, that's what we're hoping for. And I just think it's going to be a good year. I just feel it in my bones. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, I have more clients on my like roster, so to speak, than I ever usually do at this time. So I think that we're going to have a productive year. So hopefully you do too. It depends where you live also. So yeah. Then the other question is, how do I stay motivated to get my license? I have failed the national exam twice, and I just can't find the motivation to study and take it again. I really wanted this for a while, and I was ready to start a new career, and now I'm in like a slump. Okay, here's what you're going to do. Take a week off and like give yourself a break. Like forget the real estate stuff for a second because it gets overwhelming. And this is my advice if you've taken any exam. And okay, let me pause and give the disclaimer. If you're like on the verge of your course expiring or your fees are like stacking up or you have to like do something on a deadline, don't listen to me. I'm just saying this if you have the leisure of like doing this at your own pace. Take a break for a sec because it gets overwhelming, especially with the pressure of having the fails. I failed mine the first time around too, so I completely understand. And I have test anxiety on top of that. So I feel you because it's like, it's tough when you have the added pressure on top, you know? So take a break, whether that is a day, whether that's a few days or a week or whatever, and just give yourself that moment to be like, okay, I'm not thinking about real estate. I'm going to drink a smoothie and I'm going to work out and think about my brain for myself for a second and give my brain a break. And then come back to your book refreshed because your brain isn't going to retain anything if you're exhausted and if you're sick of reading real estate material. So do anything but real estate when you're doing your little break. And then come back to it. And there's going to be some like of that forgetfulness, like you're not going to remember everything, but you're going to remember a lot of it. And then that's a really great opportunity because it's not going to be as much of that flash memory, that stuff that you're just remembering because you've been reading it. And then when you go to take the test, you're like, oh shit, I kind of forgot that already. It's more of that stuff that was, you're like left with what was concrete. And then you can build again from what you don't know. I hope that you pass next time. Good luck. And don't feel bad about that, okay? Because it's like a tough ass test and so much shit to remember. So it happens to the best of us. So get the episode up before Friday afternoon next week. But you guys, you know, this week was crazy. So I did my best. But I love you all so much. And I will see you, I'll see you next Friday. Bye.